Prabhupada ki jai. Dandaha, punishment. Dama yatam, of all means of suppression. Actually, I should read from the original one. Okay. Dandaha, punishment. Dama yatam, of all separation. Asmi, I am. Nitiha, morality. Ashmi, I am. Jigisatam, of the victorious. Maunam, silence. Cha, and. Eva, also. Asmi, I am. Guhyanam, of secrets. Jnanam, knowledge. Jnanavatam, of the wise. Aham, I am. So, punishment of all separation, I am. Morality, I am of the victorious. Silence, and also I am of secrets. Knowledge, of wise, I am. So, translation. Among punishments, I am the rod of chastisement. And of those who seek victory, I am morality. Of secret things, I am silence. And of the wise, I am the wisdom. Purport. There are many suppressing agents, of which the most important are those that cut down the miscreants. When miscreants are punished, the rod of chastisement represents Krishna. Among those who are trying to be victorious in some field of activity, the most victorious element is morality. Among the confidential activities of hearing, thinking, meditating, silence is the most important, because by silence, one can make progress very quickly. The wise man is he who can discriminate between matter and spirit, between God's superior and inferior natures. Such knowledge is Krishna himself. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, I would like to thank you, His Grace Amrish Prabhu, His Grace Purnpagya Mataji, and His Grace Krishna Samarpan Krishna Prabhu for organizing this program and giving me opportunity to share my realization and listen to all the devotees' realizations. Thank you. So, there is a difference, actually, the original Bhagavad Gita and what is on the Veda base. I hope you actually realize that. I think there is, in translation, it is said that among all means of suppressing lawlessness, I am the punishment. Whereas what we just read here say, among punishment, I am the rod of chastisement. So there is actually difference in the translation. And also, I think rest of them is actually quite similar. I think that's the only thing I actually noted down. So actually Krishna here, as he's talking about actually his major opulences to Arjun. So he's saying here now, among punishment, I'm the rod of chastisement. So I was actually, this verse is very interesting. I was meditating on all those actually points here. So when it comes to punishment, so Srila Prabhupada saying that Krishna represents, the rod of chastisement. So as when I read this, I actually remembered, actually when I used to go to school, this rod of chastisement was very common among school in India, and we used to get, many times actually the punishment by our teacher. Used to get a lot of what I call the slaps on our hand with that actually rod. So what that actually represent is that actually the teacher is trying to correct us, the same here. Or Krishna or spiritual master also try to actually correct us, whenever we're actually doing wrong things or we're going into wrong direction. So what I realized is that in this actually material world, when we are actually born, so we heard this concept that this whole material world is a kind of a prison. So we are actually going through the punishment at the moment. So in this material world itself, there are also prisons, actually various countries, there are a government and there is a prison, and all the criminals or people who break the law, actually they are put in, we put them there and they have to do the time. And even they actually put them in a prison. Not all the criminals, they rectify themselves. Even the prison is called, it's a correctional department, so not everyone actually correct themselves. Very few may be actually able to change, and actually try to do the right thing after they actually going through that punishment. And same thing is actually happening in this material world, Krishna, or actually according to the law of nature, which is actually acting under the direction of Krishna. We are actually in this prison, but there are very, very few people, who actually come on this right path of devotion. In Bhagavad Gita, as it says that Bahunam Janamnam Ante Jnanvan Mam Prapaddate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Saha Mahatma Sudurlabha. So Saha Mahatma Sudurlabha. So it's a very durba, means what is it? Rare, that actually the living entity who actually realize Krishna, So we discussed this point many times, but that is actually what I realized, So many times, I complain because we face a lot of difficult situations, have to go through tough times, and this is a punishment, I'm going through, and we blame things, we do not accept. So basically, it feels like we do not accept punishment, which we have got as a result of our own karmas. So what we need to realize, this is for our own good, this is actually enforced on us so that we rectify our behavior. As Amrish Prabhu always says that actually the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to actually change our behavior. So if we manage to achieve that, then I think we achieve the real aim of a human life, or there is any point actually spending all this time in this material world. But if we couldn't able to rectify, then again we have to go through this birth, death, old age, and disease, this cycle, never-ending cycle. Perpetually we will be revolving in this. So that is actually what I realized when it says that actually Krishna represents the rod of chastisement, So he's not actually unkind, he actually loves all the living entities. Even his actually punishment is also the mercy. Actually I was reading, and I came across this realization where this actually the pastime of Krishna, the Kaliya serpent. So we all know that actually that katha, that how actually that Kaliya serpent poisoned the water of actually Yamuna, and that has become big problem for all the cows and all the actually cowherd boys and the residents of the Braj-bhumi. So Krishna was not happy. So he actually, he entered the water of Yamuna, and he was actually playing there like a mad elephant. So the Kaliya, he didn't like it, and he tried to actually catch him and bite him on his chest. But Krishna actually expanded himself, he came out of his grip, and actually he put his step on the top of his hood, and actually he thumped him, danced on his top of the hood. And Kaliya got very exhausted, his eyes become red, the blood is coming out of his mouth, and finally gave up, he surrendered. He realized that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he then actually apologized, and asked for his actually forgiveness. The Krishna didn't kill him, if he want to, he could have, but he didn't kill him because he realized, his fault, his mistake, and he surrendered. In fact, actually, Krishna left his footprints on the top of his actually hood, and as a result of that, actually, Krishna told him that you will not be killed by a Garuda. So even Krishna's that punishment is also become a mercy for Kaliya. So similarly, I think I need to understand that even we face a lot of difficult situation in this material world, it is nothing but the mercy of Krishna. So this is just the theory, but we have to actually put that in practice. Even His Holiness Mahavishnu Goswami Maharaj says that when we surrender, or even we make an effort to surrender, then Krishna gives all the strength, so even we are going through the difficulty, we are not that much affected. We feel the pain, but the pain is reduced. So that is mercy of Krishna. So even actually making a beginning on this path. So that is actually what I realize from this chastisement point. The second point here is says that one who seek victory, I am morality. So this is very interesting because Srila Prabhupada says that many people, they try to achieve or try to become victorious in whatever field they would like to, whatever they want to achieve, or in whatever field they want to be victorious. But the most victorious element is morality. So I was looking, actually what the morality represents. So the plain meaning is that, is what is right, what is wrong, how one should behave, and what are the moral codes. So that is a real victory. And I remember this point where it is said, and Srila Prabhupada again actually mentioned in his purport as well, that wise man who can discriminate between matter and spirit, God's superior and inferior nature. So that wise man or patient man or dhir person, one who knows, what is his position, that he's a spirit soul, and Krishna is the actually supreme person of Godhead, and his only business is to serve him. So when we get this human birth, which is very rare, so our duty is to actually realize our own position and actually try to be serve Krishna, get into this actually devotional practice. So that is the right thing to do. But if we fail to realize, then we are not realizing the ultimate purpose of a human life, So when we think about morality, we know that this is right, this is wrong, Actually, Paramatma, who's sitting in your heart, he's telling us, giving all the instruction. But it is up to us to listen to him, there's a free will that we have. So even we try to become victorious in any field, you want to earn money, you want to be very famous, whatever you want to do. If you fail to actually realize this point, then there is no meaning, to this human life. And that's why I think Srila Prabhupada says that the most victorious element is morality, to understand this and to actually put that in practice. And next point where it says that of sacred things, I'm silence. So Prabhupada says that actually confidential activities of hearing, thinking, meditating, silence is the most important. So actually, I was thinking that why silence, very important, and why Srila Prabhupada is saying that by being silent, one can progress very quickly. So I actually came across this one, and I was thinking that what we think, what we hear, and what we meditate, So in Nectar of Instruction, so basically it's a codes of what are the do's and don'ts of devotional service. So there are instruction on all these elements of hearing, what you should hear, what you should not hear, prajalp and all that, what you think, what we should meditate. So basically sense control, So the silence is the most important. So what is actually exactly mean by silence? So here it is said that a devotee is always transcendental to artificial fame and infamy, distress or happiness. He is very patient. He does not speak of anything but topics of Krishna. Therefore, he is called silent. Silent does not mean that one should not speak. Silent means that one should not speak nonsense. One should speak only of essentials. And the most essential speech for the devotee is to speak for the sake of Supreme Lord. So that actually explains what is the meaning of silence. And I remembered actually when we actually studying Nectar of Instruction, I came across this actually one of the lecture by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where he also explained the similar point that actually how one should select his association. Even you have to deal with actually this material world, materialistic people. We should only talk what is needed, and we should be out of that. We should not actually indulge ourselves in nonsensical, conversations, arguments, because it's only going to spoil our devotional service. And being silent means actually having control over all these things. And that's why maybe Srila Prabhupada is saying that when you achieve this element of silence, you progress very fast on the path of devotional service. And last point where it's mentioned, of the wise I am the wisdom. So I think we discussed this point many times, that what is the meaning of wisdom and wise, because everyone actually have a lot of information or knowledge, and even when we study even these religious scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, we can read, study, we can actually acquire a lot of knowledge or information in real sense. But unless we put that in a practice, it will not become a knowledge or realized knowledge. And in Bhagavad Gita 6.8, Srila Prabhupada explained this point very clearly, where he's saying that a person is said to be established in self-realization and is called a yogi or mystic when he's fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and a realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. So Srila Prabhupada says that book knowledge without realization of supreme truth is useless. So Bhagavad Gita is a science of Krishna consciousness. No one can become Krishna conscious simply by mundane scholarship. One must be fortunate enough to associate with a person who is in pure consciousness. Krishna conscious person has a realized knowledge, and by grace of Krishna, because he is satisfied with pure devotional service. By realized knowledge, one becomes perfect, and by transcendental knowledge, one can remain steady in his convictions. But by mere academic knowledge, one can be easily deluded and confused by apparent contradictions. So actually, I was meditating on this point. What is meant by being wise and wisdom? So I think if you're actually talking in terms of Bhagavad Gita, I think so. I thought this point is relevant here, and having that realized knowledge is very important, and that will actually make us wise, and that wisdom we can actually share through preaching and all that. So that is actually what I actually try to meditate on, and what I realize from this verse. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Srila Prabhu, for your very nice realization. You very nicely covered all the aspects of the translation here. So thank you, Prabhuji. My realization is along similar lines, actually, to what Prabhuji said. But I'm, in particular, I was meditating on three of the points that Lord Krishna was saying. So among all means of suppressing lawlessness, I am punishment. Of those who seek victory, I am morality. And of the wise, I am the wisdom. Those are the three that I was meditating on. It's even though the translation is quite small and the purport's quite small, it's very deep. This is a very deep verse. So in regards to the first point, among all means of suppressing lawlessness, I am punishment. So, not even thinking about it materially, I was just thinking that, obviously any sort of action that we perform elicits a reaction, and a karmic reaction, whether material or spiritual. And that is ultimately, that authority is given by Lord Krishna. The karmic reactions, or the reactions that we receive for actions, are given by Krishna. And the form of punishment, or the form of karma that we gain, that binds us to the material world, is again ultimately done by Lord Krishna. And I was just thinking, I think Srila Prabhu alluded to this as well, but even us coming down to the material world from the spiritual world, us falling down is punishment, and that is due to our misunderstanding of our position in the spiritual world, and therefore Lord Krishna punishes us to come down to the material world. And that is both. That's also not necessarily a punishment, because in the human form of life, we have the opportunity to understand Lord Krishna, and that itself is something we relish, and that itself is nectar. And we get a glimpse of the spiritual world in our constitutional position. So that was what I realized from the first part. Lord Krishna then says that of those who seek victory, I am morality. Now, this was something that I found very interesting, because even if we think about it, if I think about it from the point of view of, again, what exactly is victory? What's the biggest victory that we can have? And that victory is getting out of this, the material modes of nature, getting out of the material bounds that bind us to the material world, and going back to Godhead. That's the ultimate victory. But we can't get there, even if we're, practicing Krishna consciousness, if we brand ourselves, if we tie ourselves to an institution, we do chant 16 rounds, we, do some service. If we don't have the right mindset, then that's not, we may not actually go back to Godhead, or we may not actually go where we have to go. And so morality in that aspect is, we make sure that we're not cheating anybody. We make sure that we're leading our spiritual life in a way that is benefiting us, and also not hindering anyone else's devotional service. Because that ultimately is the morality, and that is what will get us to the spiritual world. That is what will help us remember Lord Krishna at the time of death, when we have nothing that binds us here. If we don't have anything to regret, and so this is both applicable, both materially, but very much spiritually as well. And so I have to be careful in how I navigate through spiritual life, because that is, to achieve the ultimate victory of going back to Godhead. This is the most important thing, is that we do not want to, commit aparad, or hinder anyone else's devotional service, or stop anyone else from doing their devotional service, because that in itself is a material act, and that will be punished. So that's what I realized from the second part. And the other part of the translation that stuck out to me was, of the wise I am the wisdom. So Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that the wise man is he who can discriminate between matter and spirit, between God's superior and inferior natures. Such knowledge is Krishna himself. And so, every, again, in devotional service, or whatever progress is made in devotional service, whatever conversations, whatever thoughts that you have, whatever meditation that you do about Lord Krishna, or about understanding our philosophy itself, is a representation of Lord Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says, such knowledge is Krishna himself. So whatever progress that we're making is directly related to Lord Krishna. So, Krishna is in everything, as we all know. Krishna is omnipotent. Krishna is in everything, but Krishna is in the knowledge as well. So there's no difference, as we say, between, Lord Krishna's words and Lord Krishna. At the same time, any sort of devotional service or any sort of bhakti that we're performing is essentially, if done with a pure and sincere heart and done in line with the disciplic succession and in a bona fide manner, is also a representation of Lord Krishna. Whether it be kirtan, whether it be cleaning vessels, chanting, reading Srila Prabhupada's books, any form of devotional service is that representation, which is why, again, it's so important, and for me, I should not be taking that for granted. So ultimately, what I realized is that there's so much to keep in mind of when going about devotional service, and so many things, even in the process of devotional service, bind us to the material world. But the ultimate test and what we prepare our entire lives for is, getting away from all the entanglement and doing everything with a pure and sincere heart, so that, we can achieve the ultimate victory of going back to Godhead. So that's my realization. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, great devotees. Thank you, Ambrish Prabhu. Thank you, Punya Pangadevi Dasimataji, and thank you, Krishna Prabhu, for your solid punches and, of course, supporting us. And thank you, Sri Prabhu, for systematically defining all those words, so nicely giving examples. So, my relation. Dando damayatam asmi nitir asmi jigitsatam monam chaivasmi guyanam jnanam janva tam aham. Among punishments, I am the rod of chastisement, and of those who seek victory, I am morality. Of secret things, I am silence, and of the wise, I am wisdom. As Krishna Prabhu said, very small purport, and verse is not small, but yeah, the verse is very important. In a lot of things Krishna is highlighting in a very brief manner, that what he is. On the purport, the final line which Prabhupada writes, the wise man is he who can discriminate between matter and spirit, between God's superior and inferior natures. Such knowledge is Krishna himself. So when we put this sentence into perspective, what Krishna is saying, then I started meditating that why Prabhupada is writing this. And in the same perspective, that how we actually implement this in our day-to-day life. So lately, I have been reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I would share some verses from there in the same reference. But before I go there, we all know the background of Bhagavad Gita, why this battle of Mahabharata was fought. It was all about morality, where Arjuna's relations and Duryodhana's relations were different, and they decided to fight. And then Arjuna asked some question to Krishna, which was against, came out of the morality. But before I start talking about that also, I would also like to quickly refer in the same reference about this verse, that how omnipotent Krishna is, and in various forms, from Bhagavatam, That verse is Yatha ahvaito vahini darusva eka swayonishu nanema bhati vishwatma bhuteshu cha tatha puman. Translation: The Lord as super soul pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, though he is absolute one without a second. So in the opulences, we are studying this. This is from Canto 1, Chapter 2. That how Krishna is actually is everywhere. And in the purport, Prabhupada further defined the same thing. That Lord Vasudeva, the supreme of Godhead, by one of his plenary parts, expands himself all over the material world, and his existence can be perceived even within the atomic energy. Matter, antimatter, proton, neutron, etc. are all different effects of Paramatma, feature of the Lord. And Prabhupada further writes, as from wood fire can be manifested, or as butter can be churned out of milk, so also the presence of the Lord as Paramatma can be felt by the process of legitimate hearing and chanting of the transcendental subjects, which are essentially treated in the Vedic literature like the Upanishad and Vedanta. So this is how Krishna's presence can be felt by the devotees. And this is how Krishna actually is everywhere. And for us, for devotee like us, that how we can differentiate, discriminate is the word Prabhupada is using this verse is our skill, which we acquire out of self-realization. And for the self-realization, we have to, of course, follow a process. Now, about the knowledge, Krishna in the same chapter, as part of his opulence, he's talking about that to whom he gives knowledge. And that's very famous. We all remember that verse 10-11. Tesham evanukam partam mahamagyana jantamaha nasayatmi atma bhavasto jnana deepena bhasvata. Out of compassion for them, I dwelling in their hearts, destroy the shining lamp of knowledge, the darkness born of ignorance. So this is Krishna's mercy. We sing that prayer also all the time. That knowledge comes, that is also opulence. It doesn't happen automatically. Now, Sridhar Prabhu very nicely talked about monam, but one more thing which I would like to add to this. He talked about what monam is, and in the Canto 3 of chapter number 27, verse number 7, which also talks about the monam. And then Prabhupada translation is different, but the Prabhupada purport is different, but this is exactly what Sridhar Prabhu read. So the verse is like this: Sarva bhute samatvena nirvirena prasangataha brahmacharyena maunena swadharmena baliyasa. So brahmacharyena maunena. So in the translation, it says, in executing devotional service. So this maunena is part of executing devotional service. In executing devotional service, one has to see every living entity equally, without enmity towards anyone, yet without intimate connection with anyone. This is hard. One has to observe celibacy, be grave, and execute his eternal activities, offering the results to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We all know this. And in the purport, I will only read about the monam because, and Sridhar very nicely covered this point. I'll just quickly repeat it. A devotee should not speak needlessly. A serious devotee has no time to speak of nonsense. He is always busy in Krishna consciousness. Whenever he speaks about Krishna. Mauna means silence. Silence does not mean that one should not speak at all, but that he should not speak of nonsense. And then, I don't know whether Sridhar covered this or not, but you might have, I might not have listened. He should be very enthusiastic in speaking about Krishna. This is very important. And this is a good nectar instruction. So this is about Maunin, where this is part of executing our devotional service, and out of devotional service, we get the realization, we get the knowledge, and we become wise. Okay. So now coming back to those morality, because the devotee, as a devotee, we practice being a good human being. That's why we are becoming devotee. We learn a lot of life skills. We don't want to cheat anyone. We are not greedy, and a lot of other things. You know, we practice so many things. So we study more. Morality is in our DNA now. So when actually Arjuna got confused when he saw his family members in front of him, then he started realizing that what is his moral, what his morality is talking about him, what he should do. And I'll not read many verses. I'll only read one of them, one or two, and probably just to bring my point. So the verse is Aho bata mahat papam kartum vyavasita vayam yadraja sukha lobhena hantum sajanam udyataha. Oh, alas, how strange is it? How strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes about morality here. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world. But Arjun, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. So this is the quality of a devotee. They are like Krishna Prabhu rightly said that even obstructing a devotee to perform devotional activities, ahimsa. Krishna talks in the chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, so this is a moral. Now, if you go to one more verse, I would like to, in the same context, Arjuna Vacha Katham Bhishmam Aham Sankhe Dodam Cha Madhusudanaha Ishubihi Pratiyotasyas Ishubihi Pratiyotasyami Urja Ravaha Arisudana. Arjun said, "O killer of Madhu, Krishna, how can I counterattack with arrows in battle like Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship?" This again, yeah, we continue. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes a very important sentence which I would like to read. So, respectable superiors like Bhishma, the grandfather, and Dronacharya, the teacher, are always worshipable. Even if they attack, they should not be counterattacked. It is general etiquette that superiors are not to be offered even a verbal fight. Even if they are sometimes harsh in behavior, they should not be harshly treated. Then how is it possible for Arjuna to counteract them? So that's morality. This is etiquette, but a devotee can do it. So I'm coming back to this. And Prabhupada further writes in the same verse, would Krishna ever attack his own grandfather, Ugrasena, or his teacher, Sandipani Muni? These are some of the arguments by Arjuna to Krishna. So that's the question answer on morality going on. And then we know the Bhagavad Gita spoken and what happened, and we get so much knowledge from it. Now, while we are on this topic of morality, I would now like to refer something from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now I realize, I don't know how much I realize, that why Chaitanya Charitamrita actually is PhD. It is not for everybody, and it should not be read unless somebody is qualified under guidance to read it. I have been reading teachings of Lord Chaitanya, but I think that's also it's very very brief and not many points covered because Chaitanya Chaitanya is very descriptive. So the verses I'm going to refer are from Madhya Lila, chapter number 7, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taken sannyas and he's leaving for visiting South India. And he's giving excuses and he's having argument and he's having discussion. Very interesting. And I referred similar kind of situation, but I'll come back to this later, which I referred last week. So here, So we all have heard about the Lord Chaitanya and Saurabham Bhattacharya conversation, and how he became a devotee, and he became a pure devotee. And so when he is leaving there's a lot of conversation, but I'll come to the verses which I would like to refer, and I will read translation only. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked the Bhattacharya to bless him while he engaged in the devotional service of Lord Krishna at home, so that Sarvabhauma's mercy the Lord could return to Jagannath Puri. Now, saying this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu departed on his tour, and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya immediately fainted and fell to the ground. Although Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya fainted, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not take notice of him. Rather, he left quickly. Who can understand the mind and intention of the Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? So that is what struck my mind, that why Lord is doing like this. That when he has spent so much time preaching him and spent so much time together, and when now he's fainted, he's not even looking at him. So in the next, it says, this is the nature of the mind of an uncommon personality. Sometimes it is soft like a flower, but sometimes it is as hard as thunderbolt. The hearts of those above common behavior are sometimes harder than a thunderbolt and sometimes softer than a flower. How can one accommodate such contradiction in great personalities? And after that, Lord Nityananda Prabhu raised Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and with the help of his men saw him to his home. So that is a pastime which I wanted to refer, that how actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acted, and we all might have heard it, this kind of story. Now the other instance which I would like to refer, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually pretending, he's lying, which again very interesting. And we are referring in terms of morality, you know. So this verse is, the translation is, knowing everything, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was aware that Vishwarupa had already passed away. A pretense of ignorance was necessary, however, so that he could go to South India and liberate the people there. So the reason which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was giving to his devotee, why he wants to go to, because he's looking for his brother Vishwarupa, who has taken sannyas and who's gone to South India. So let me go. Devotees were not letting go. Again, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has to pretend. Again, this is a very interesting pastime. And we study about morality, we practice morality, we do this, we do that. But, and I've seen even pure devotees, I don't know, I should not name it, but yeah, this is beyond my capacity. To conclude this matter, in the same chapter, in fact, before this discussion came, this has been already covered. And it is again very important in the same respect, the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Actually, the Lord was controlled by the good qualities of all his devotees. On the pretense of attributing faults, he tasted all these qualities. I said, okay. And in the purport of what very nicely defined about this attributing the faults, pretense of attributing faults. And he was enjoying. All the accusations made by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu against his beloved devotees actually showed his great appreciation of their intense love for him. So before this, there are a lot of verses which actually the book talks about, that there are various reasons are given by those devotees why you should not go, why you should spend time with, this can happen with you, and there, yeah, all sorts of things. Very interesting. And Prabhupada further writes, yet he mentioned these faults, one after another, as if he were offended by their intense affection. The personal associates of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sometimes behaved contrary to regulative principle out of intense love for Lord. And because of their love, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself sometimes violated the regulative principles of a sannyasi. In the eyes of the public, such violations are not good. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so controlled by his devotees' love that he was obliged to break some of the rules. That is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that is Chaitanya Charitamrita talking about this. Although accusing them, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was indirectly indicating that he was very satisfied with their behavior in pure love of Godhead. Therefore, in verse number 27, before that, he mentioned that his devotees and associates place more importance on love of Krishna than a social etiquette. There are many instances of devotional service rendered by previous acharyas who did not care about social behavior when intensely absorbed in love for Krishna. So Chaitanya Prabhu, I don't know, this is beyond me. Unfortunately, as long as we are within this material world, we must observe social customs to avoid criticism by the general populace. This is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire. I'll just read the final line. Unfortunately, as long as we are within this material world, we must observe social customs to avoid criticism by the general populace. This is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire. And this is, of course, Prabhupada's desire also. And how fortunate we are that our Maharaj has always taught us how to apply this Vedic knowledge in our day-to-day life. This is exactly what we are telling the devotees who are following us. And this is exactly why those devotees are sticking around, that they find a practical solution how to implement this knowledge in their life and how make sense out of it. Otherwise, this becomes very idealistic and we get into all those technicalities and the rules and regulation, and we forget that it is all about self-realization. It is all about love to Sri Krishna. So that is what I wanted to share out of this morality background. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Very good. No answer? Anybody is there?
Okay, I think we should complete this discussion then. Thank you very much. Nobody's here. Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki Jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki Jai. Srila Gurudev ki Jai.
Yeah.
Word to word synonymous translation and purport of Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. And thank you very much, all the wonderful devotees.